Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. That sight of soaring flames, burning trees, and scorched earth is becoming a familiar one for more and more people around the world. But my guest today is only too familiar with what it is like to truly be in the heat of the moment. My guest today, Charles Vaught, is author of State of Fire, which gives raw, unexpected, and all too truthful and often sometimes humorous view of one man's journey into the world of wildland firefighting. Based on Charles's experience as a crew member in the Highlands 20, which is once described as an elite 20-man hand crew, Charles's book pulls back the curtains on the mysteries of those who go toe-to-toe in the battle with nature, exposing various overlooked aspects of what it means and takes to fight wildfire. From the raw physicality of the job to the job's transformational qualities to the extreme camaraderie earned along the way, State of Fire exposes the toll that wildland firefighter pays physically, mentally, socially, and of course the toll it takes on the loved ones that are part of the incredible people that do the role. Now, contrary to what you may think, in today's episode, we are not simply going to position wildland firefighters as some sort of heroic role models, sanitized of every shred of truth. In fact, you're going to be hearing from Charles about their flaws, the ego weaknesses, their baggage, and hopefully giving you a better understanding of not only the type of people who go into the wildlands of America to fight the fires, but also the reality of the job itself. State of Fire is about finding commonality by going through hardship with strangers who soon become closer than our families. Before we jump in there with today's podcast, I wanted to ask a massive favor. Whatever platform you're listening on, could you hit that subscribe or follow button for us? That really helps out the podcast. Thank you. How are you, my man?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good. What time of day is it there?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. That's all right. You're nice and fresh. I was worried. I wasn't sure. I'm crap with my time zones. I always get sort of mixed up when we're doing stuff all over the world, and I try and have on this world map that I have behind me. But I think it just makes me feel more educated. I don't actually think it does anything. It's like, you know, when people have those big lists of books behind them, and they're like, yeah,
right.
I'm so goddamn smart, but you're like, they haven't read any of them, or it doesn't mean anything. Anyway, my man, how are you?
I'm good. I'm all coffeed up and I'm ready. I've been
all coffeed up.
Just really looking forward to this, and ready to just jump into it.
Beautiful. We've tried to put this together for a little while now, my man. So I'm really thankful for your patience, and I'm glad that we've managed to carve out this opportunity. I really enjoyed reading it. Actually, it's kind of really relevant at the minute, to be honest, mate. I don't know if, and I won't put what we're talking about now in the podcast, but I don't know if you thought about the relevance of giving your work another sort of push, and another. I'm sure you already have. I'm sure this has already been in the front of your mind. But like wildfires, from a business perspective and from a fire service perspective, people are really interested in learning and trying to develop their knowledge base in this world. Yeah. So it's just one of those serendipitous events that we seem to have planned it in for now. We also had a gentleman from a company called Avi, which is a drone company, and he was talking about wildfires and how they're using that technology now. So, I mean, I don't want to stamp over all the stuff we're going to talk about, but yeah, I'm really, really interested in it, mate. It's kind of been in the back of my mind, jumping in and out of my thoughts.
Perfect.
So I'm really glad we've been able to do this.
I love it.
I watched your YouTube with a gentleman whose name escapes me. You managed to do that one in person. He was a lovely guy. That was a really great chat. I really enjoyed that.
Brandon Dunham with Anchor Point Podcast.
Point, that was the one. Yeah. Cool dude. I like that.
That was awesome.
He's doing a good thing there.
He is. We had a real good time together. I went down on the road trip. He's in Reno. And it was about a day and a half drive from where I live. And we got together and just had a few beers, and it was a good time.
You know what? I think we have this like elitist thing in the UK. If we say like, oh, you got to drive for 2 hours to get somewhere, we're like, really? Oh, 2 hours? That's ridiculous. But then in the States, you guys will drive across, all over the place, and you won't even blink at it. You're like, 7 hours? Yeah, that's easy. I'll do that. And we're like, oh God, 2 hours really?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know what it is. Just your condition, isn't it?
I was going to say, if you really want your mind blown, I drove from Washington State to Florida and back again. It took me 6 weeks last summer.
What the hell, dude? What was it for? Was it just a road trip and experiences?
Yeah, it was just like a great American road trip. I was like, I couldn't travel internationally, so I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going.
How much
so I did.
does the cultural aspects change when you travel state to state? Is it like a different, because geographically the size of it is like it is a different country.
Yes.
But does it pendulum that much? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard the term Southern hospitality.
Yeah.
But it's real. It's a real thing. Like once I hit Texas, Texas, and then Southeast, it was just, I can't even tell you, probably 4 or 5 times throughout the time I was down there, I'd have people come up and like pull in behind me at a gas station or wherever I was at, and they'd get out and they just want to meet me. They would see my plates on my car, and they're like, "Oh, you're from Washington. How are you? Like, it's so nice to meet you. What are you doing here? Like, you're so far from home. How's it going?" And it was just like, I don't know where I'm from. People just don't do things like that.
Yeah.
And it was like, people were just so friendly, and like New Orleans was just, I was blown away by how like friendly and flirty and like just fun everything was. There was no like tension. There was no racial tensions. There was no weirdness. It's those
intangibles that really add to the richness of life, isn't it? And you can't really, like I say, you can't really put a tangible metric on them. We feel it sometimes when we go from, so in the UK, we talk like villages versus city life. You go to London's great. It's like the melting pot of lots of cultures and stuff like that. But in terms of personal niceties and stuff like that, there is very few. You know, when I stop people and I'm trying to say hello or something like that, they look at you like, what the fuck? What's your problem? You know, why are you touching me? Why are you talking to me? You know what I mean? Who the fuck are you? You know, they're about to pull out some pepper spray or some shit.
Yeah.
Whereas like, when you go to the villages, people just seem to have more time. And you know, it's one thing, you know, ironically, I love about podcasting, because we are trying to, the theory is, and I think this is kind of why we've seen such an expansion of podcasting, is because it's the art of communication. You know, it's people trying to nurture and promote having, you know, conscious listening in conversation, trying to really nurture that, you know, reciprocity of having a really valuable conversation, asking open-ended questions, and really trying to sincerely listen to somebody else. I think, ironically, we've never been so connected as we are now, yet we've never felt so alone sometimes, you know, having conversations. And that's like, you know, way back when it was like when we were younger, maybe 30 years ago, it was all about education. We needed to get that was the scarcity, I feel. It was like we needed to get degrees and qualifications, and we still need those, you know, but that was the thing that people didn't have because there were so many people that weren't educated. Whereas now, I feel there's lots of people that have got degrees and stuff like that, but communication is just what we're hemorrhaging. People are just not giving each other the time. And I think that's going to become a skill set. Yeah. And you can't, I mean, there are courses you can go on, but it's hard to nurture that if you don't sincerely care about people. And that's where I feel like the whole thing's flipped itself around. I don't know. Right.
Yeah. Charisma is hard to manufacture. And I think that the kind of, I can like pinpoint in my life, like the decline of where I consider like the decline of civilization. And that was with the onset of cell phones.
Yeah. Why?
Because here in America, like once you could like start getting a hold of people anytime you wanted to, it just like, it takes away like talking to people in real life. It takes away like human interaction. Anytime, like I remember when it was like, if you called someone and they weren't home, well, tough titty.
Yeah.
You just didn't see them, or you waited until they got home. And once you have access to someone 24/7 and there's no like, you know, barriers.
It's the value of scarcity, isn't it? It's like you say, you had to like walk down the street to call on somebody. And whilst you were walking down the street, that literal 4-minute period, you were taking in the world, you were saying hello to everybody, and you got there and you'd be willing to wait, or you'd have to walk to the call, you know, to the call box, to the phone box, and you would really value that conversation. Whereas now it's like, oh, you know, shit, I tried to call Charles, I wasn't there. I'll ring him in a minute. You know, I'll ring him here, I'll ring that. And it becomes less valuable because it's so, you know, fleeting, I suppose.
Yeah.
I hate that.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, me too.
The optimists of the world, we're going to have to try and keep it going and have...
I know, you just got to do what you can.
So, are you sitting comfortably? Are you ready to crack on, brother?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm good to go.
Thanks for coming back and listening to the Firefighters podcast. This one was brought to you by William Wood Watches. William Wood Watches, as I'm sure you're already aware, are the makers of those incredibly authentic watches with a piece of firefighting history in every single one. On the 9th of June, they created 250 beautiful limited edition pieces of the bravest watch for the FDNY Foundation. They're donating 15% from every single watch to the FDNY Foundation, and it's pretty incredible to see that William Wood Watches are now in the Rockefeller Center, the FDNY Fire Zone store that's held within Rockefeller Center. On the 9th of June, they will be having one of their watches, which is going to press William Wood Watches into the history of FDNY. Johnny and the team are over there kicking ass and taking names. Be sure to join them on their journey. Head over to williamwoodwatches.com, check them out on Instagram, check them out on YouTube. You can check all of their watches right there, from the Jubilee to the Triumph to the Valium to the Bronze to the Chivalrous, and they run competitions supporting firefighters charities all over the world, including the firefighters charity in the UK. Charles Vaught, welcome to the Firefighters podcast. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I know we've been trying to get this together for a little while, but doing some of the work that I've been doing with ISAR and stuff like that, your book has slowly sort of floated its way as more and more of a priority in my life. Obviously, I read it now probably, what was it, 2 or 3 months ago? When did we first connect? It's been a long time.
It was June of 2021, June or July.
Jesus, where's that time gone? Where's that time gone? Jesus.
Life happens.
But you know what, mate? It's probably a reflection of how valuable and interesting I found it. Not to start by blowing too much smoke up your ass, True. But I kept coming back to it, and I kept going, Jesus, I want to make that one happen. So there is so many. What I love most about what you've put together, there is so many watch stories. There's so many culture stories, and there's so many references of the real boots on the ground experiences, and there's a lot of characters that we're going to get into in this chat. Sometimes I feel like some people and some authors that I've spoken with can either go heavy into detail, or they completely go off the end of the spectrum with like too much brash conversation. Whereas you've struck the balance really, really well. I feel like there's some really cool practical stuff that we're going to get in here. But I wanted to start with back in 2015. So what was it? Take us back in 2015. It was the summer, I think it was the September, right, in Washington. Tell us what was happening there.
So it started in June. So let's just say that every year before fire season begins, we usually do about 7 days of kind of firefighter intro to kind of get your feet back into the game, get your head back into the game. And during that week long kind of briefing, they'll go into the upcoming fire predictions, what they consider to be hazards, what the fire season's going to look like. And that summer, we had a briefing, or a week-long briefing, and they discussed that that we had 0 snowpack, which snowpack, the snow that sits on the mountains, and as it slowly melts, it hydrates the land and keeps it from being
susceptible to fire, I suppose.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I had a text message come in and distracted me.
When you say fire season, I wanted to double click on when you say fire season. So they specifically, they sort of risk-based crewing is probably what we might look at in the UK. So they re-recruit and they get all the team back in. When is fire season considered to be?
So let's just say if you took the United States and you divide it in half straight down the middle, you would take the western half of the United States, and that is where you're going to have fire season. So every summer, it starts earlier in the south and later in the north. So in Arizona, your fire season is going to last from about April to July. And then up north, your fire, for instance, in Washington and Oregon, your fire seasons are going to start around June, and they're going to last until around September, October. And unfortunately, that's just become the norm here in America, where I remember when I was a kid, I never experienced wildfires like this. Yeah. But definitely in the past 8 to 10 years, they just get ramped up more and more and more. And the peak of which was in 2015, when during that week-long briefing, they told us that we were we were like at the peak of a 40-year drought that's been affecting the entire western half of the United States. We had 0 snowpack, so the land is completely dehydrated. And then on top of that, we have a lot of diseased areas, a lot of diseased forests where different bugs have gotten in there, pine beetles and whatnot have gotten in, and just you have a lot. They'll get in and they'll just destroy forest where you'll just have dead trees standing, which are very dangerous. And then all of that combined with their predicting like record-breaking temperatures, and it just became this like perfect storm. Where I'll put it to you like this: when I first started in 2013, we had about, it was probably a 60% work to 40% off ratio. In 2014, the workload bumped up to about an 80% workload to 20% off ratio. And then in 2015, it was a literal 95.5% ratio.
Jesus.
So I worked 100 days. My contract was for 100 days in 2015. And during those 100 days, I had 5 days off. And
Jesus.
Yeah, and
how do you balance that with your normal? So several questions. Firstly, when you say they track it, do they have people going out? Are these part of the fire department that track the land and track the tree fall and track the? You say about diseased forests. You know, do they have people
Correct.
tracking that all year round, or they send out crews ahead of time and try and get an understanding for what capacity they're going to need in the crewing?
So I was employed by the Washington State Department of Natural Resources, and they are a statewide agency that deal with the forest management. So they have, year-long observations going on, tracking information, pulling data. And then, at these briefings, we're getting all these different forest experts that are coming in and telling us these things. On top of, we're getting meteorologists that are also coming in, telling us what's going on. So we're getting this well-rounded briefing of what to expect. And it was like nothing I've ever experienced before or since, for sure.
Did it fill you with excitement, or was it trepidation? Was it like, yes, it's going to get real this year, or was it?
At that briefing, when the briefing was done, like structure guys might have a different mindset than wildland guys. I'm sure you guys probably do, but at the end of that briefing, when they told us the world was going to burn, we were stoked.
Yeah, no, that's it, isn't it? That's the irony.
We were so pumped. We're just like, let it burn. So like, bring up, because all that means to us is overtime, which all that means to us is more money.
So how many people were in that crewing? How many people are in that sort of briefing? What's the call up?
So in that briefing, there was they took half of the firefighter of the Washington State DNR, Department of Natural Resources, the DNR. They took half of their resources, of their firefighting resources, and they did a briefing. And then when we were done, they took the other half. I believe there was probably close to 200 to 300 firefighters in my group.
Wow, that's a big number.
Yeah, that was in that briefing. Well, that wasn't just my crew. That was like a lot of crews from around the state.
Yeah.
So on my crew personally, I was on the Highlands 20. And that's a 20-man hand crew. So there's 20 of us, and we live together, work together, and play together for the entire summer.
So has everybody there already been trained? Or, for example, like, people come, people leave, maybe there'll be a new crew next year, not everyone's going to roll over. Mm-hmm. Is there a certain amount of training people have got to do before they get into? I mean, how did you get into it? Today's episode is supported by our good friends over at Duty Crew Coffee. Now, as you're probably aware, coffee is the most popular drink worldwide, with over 2.25 billion cups of coffee consumed every single day, and over 70 million of those are in the UK alone. Most of this is consumed in our crew rooms, our watch offices, and by our emergency services frontline staff. So when you're getting together around the mess table, don't be drinking no nasty ass cheap coffee. Nobody likes that guy that brings the cheap stuff. Life is too short to be drinking crap coffee. So if you head on over to dutycrew.co.uk or click the link in the podcast below, you'll be able to jump on over and see the Duty Crew coffee products. They come in 227 gram oversized high quality recyclable standard pouches, and they are individually wrapped 10 gram coffee bags. They're quick, mess free, convenient. They have a one-way degassing valve, which is an absolute must for storage of freshly roasted coffee. You can get the 20-pack response bag. They've got the HQ, they've got the No Duff, they've got the Unity, the Decaf, and of course all of their products are Rainforest Alliance certified, Fair Trade Foundation, and most importantly, they taste freaking epic. I started drinking Duty Crew about 2 months ago, and then when I fell in love with it, I got in contact with them and they came on board with the podcast. So jump on over to Duty Crew Coffee if you want some of the good stuff. Now back to the podcast.
No, there is actually no training. It's I guess you consider it on the job training. That week long briefing that you have also includes It depends. If you're brand new, you're going to have all these like intro into firefighting classes. If you're coming back as a second, third year, fourth year, you're just going to be doing these sort of like firefighter refreshers.
Okay.
And these are going to take you through like all aspects of firefighting, or everything that you're really going to need to know, because you're not going to need to know like all the sort of upper level things. But as a ground pounder, they're going to teach you how to dig fire line around the fire. They're going to teach you how to use a radio, how to use a compass. And then you're going to have countless hours of hiking with a line pack on your back. And a line pack is a specially made backpack that carries all your gear, because you're self-sufficient. You carry everything with you: your food, your water, your snacks, your fuel, your for your chainsaw, your bar oil for your chainsaw, extra chains, a book to read, a first aid kit, your fire shelter, and it all adds up to about 45 pounds.
Wow.
And the line pack distributes the weight, so you have about 10% on your shoulders and 45% of the weight rests on your hips, or about 90% of the weight rests on your hips. And you really need to be used to that and training for it, because otherwise it'll take you down real quick.
So you started out in 2013. So this you weren't like straight out of college. What did you do before it, and why did you even want to get involved?
So I was 34 when I got started with fighting wildfire, and as I found out, it is a young man's game. Most of my crew on average was about 20, 21 was the median age. So I was the old dog on the crew,
full of spunk and ready to go, fit as anything. Bless them.
That's right. That's right. Got to show these young bucks what's up. So they before I fought fire, I've had a very varied career. I've worked on fishing boats in Alaska when I was 21.
Jesus.
I moseyed my way down to Venice Beach, California, and worked at a live event production company for 7 years. I traveled through Asia for 2 years, 2010 to 2012. Came back. I got dengue fever, which was amazing. Don't recommend that.
Take that one off the
Don't
list.
recommend it at all.
How did you get that?
Yeah. Take that bite in Thailand. Yeah, down in Phuket, and I just got a mosquito bite, and then woke up and I had a fever, and it was really bad. I could go into it, but
that takes some people down, doesn't it? That's enough to finish some people off.
It kills people.
Not messing about.
It definitely can be fatal. What I did learn from it was that there are 4 different strains. Each one is deadlier than the next. But the silver lining is, once you get one strain, then you're immune to that strain if you live. So I got that going for me. After I came, and it really wiped me out. Then I had to come back to the States. I lived with my folks again, and kind of got my health back. And then started going to college, because I was like, well, I need to go back. I really wanted to live abroad again, so I wanted to teach English. So I got my 4-year degree, and I left in 2017. But by the way, while I was going to school, while I was going to university, that's why I fought fire.
Okay.
So that's when I jumped in. I jumped into college during my mid-30s, and then I jumped into Wildland Firefighting in my mid-30s. And
that's a pretty ballsy move to jump back into it when you're in your 30s. A lot of people, they feel like they've got a set of cards when they're in their 20s, and they're like, I've done education. This is what I've got to offer the world, and I'm going to go out and do it. It takes a lot of humility to go back and do your studies again.
Yeah, I've never been one to live a conventional lifestyle. It's always been like a house and a white picket fence and 2.5 kids. That's just never appealed to me. So I've always liked to do things that were challenging. And I was, my first spring in college, and I was like, wow, I'm really, really broke. I really need some money. But I was like, I need to do something. So what can I do? So I had friends that worked in the oil fields in North Dakota, and I know they make good money. And then I had friends that fight wildfire, and I started calling people up, and my Wildland Firefighter friend called me back the next day and said, hey, I can get you on a crew, and you'll make probably I don't know, probably about 15 grand over the summer.
That's
and to someone, so to someone who's a broke college kid, that was like, yeah. and then it was a no brainer. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I don't care. I don't mind working hard. And I honestly had no idea what it entailed. I didn't know what it meant to be a wildland firefighter. I just knew that there was forest fires and these guys put them out. There was no connection. And my friend that got me into this, the only thing he said to me was, well, as long as you like to work hard and drink beer around a campfire, you'll fit in just fine. And I'm like, I like both those things.
I'd be worried about anybody that said they didn't like that. You'd have to sort of tilt your head and look at them and be like, dude, what? Is that a serious question? So when you were kitting everybody out at 2015, we got rigged up for this. Team of 20, what sort of ranks and roles are we looking at in a team of 20? What's the typical sort of crew look like?
Okay. So at the top, you're going to have a crew boss. And your crew boss is the crew boss. He is the one that manages the crew, does all the paperwork to make sure you get paid. He's the one that will direct you and give you orders, and he'll go to briefings, and then disseminate the information to the rest of the crew. Below the crew boss, you're going to have 3 squad bosses, and the squad bosses are in charge. There's going to be what we had was one squad boss was like our SAW team leader. So you would have our SAW teams, and he would be in charge of the SAW teams. And then the other 2 squad bosses were in charge of the rest of the crew. So then you'd have from the 3 squad bosses or squaddies, then you'd have 2 squads of 8. You'd have an A squad and a B squad, and we would line out. And so when we were hiking into a fire, this was very important. So we would have our crew boss would lead, followed by our squad bosses. Then and we were walking in the line. We're not spread out. We're not weaving in and out. We're all walking in straight lines. We have our squad boss, our crew boss, our squad bosses, and then behind them are the tools. Starting with the SAW team. So you have your sawyers with the chainsaws. Following the sawyers are the swampers, and what the swampers do is, as the SAW teams are cutting away fuel from the fire line, they're taking that fuel away and pulling it away, either away from the fire, or if it's burnt, they're pulling it into the fire. Following the SAW team, you're going to have your tools. The first set of tools, you're going to have Pulaskis. Pulaskis are it looks like a pickaxe with one side is a pickaxe and the other side is an actual axe head. And they're going to hit the ground, swipe it, and then take a step or two, swipe, take a step or two, swipe.
A quick reminder for all of our listeners of our monthly giveaway. Now, as part of our partnership with Hikes, Rosenbauer, and Tallyman, we give away that little bit extra to our podcast listeners every single month. You can get 2 personalized BA tallies. These are hardware, and they've got your own name on them, they've got your own service number on them, and they have the podcast logo on the back. And then for the juicy stuff, Hikes give away a pair of their incredible footwear. And some of the stuff is pretty expensive stuff, to be honest with you. We try and switch in and change it every month. We are guided by the gods of Hikes to make sure we are giving you exactly what you need for that time of year. So it might be boots, it might be trainers, and then once every quarter our good friends over at Rosenbauer are giving away their Boros B5 firefighting boots as well. So to be in with a chance to win, jump over to our social media platforms or YouTube, where you need to tag a member of the emergency services in the post, be following our page, and you will be in with a chance to win at the end of every single month. Back to the show.
Following behind them, the other Pulaskis are coming along, swipe, 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 step, swipe, step. Behind them, you have the rest of the tools, and they have they call them a rhino, and it's basically like an industrial garden hoe. They're really heavy duty, and they're scrape the men with those tools they're scraping down. And by the last person, the tail gunner, the goal is to have an 18-inch wide fire line that's been dug around the fire. So that's why it goes in a particular order, because you have your chainsaws that go, and they'll cut like about an 8 to 10 foot swath around the fire's edge, and then following them are the tools, and they're breaking the earth, they're breaking and scraping the earth and pulling it away. So that way, like I said, the goal is to have it, which blows my mind, because I would not think in a million years that 18 inches of mineral soil.
18. Well, I mean, to some people,
fire.
18 inches sounds like a lot, and as a man, 18 inches does sound like a lot. But in terms of fire, jumping and stuff like that, that's nothing. That's not even the length of your arm. And I was going to ask you about fires jumping and the speed in which they travel. 18 inches sounds like nothing, right?
It does, and it is, and sometimes there's smoke jumpers, and smoke jumpers are they'll parachute into fires, and they're usually 4 to 6 man teams. Excuse me, and they'll put down what's called jumper line, and theirs is only 6 inches, so it really doesn't take that much to stop a fire. It's really mind blowing to see like how little it takes to stop a wildfire. Yeah. Yes, they can rage and they can get out of control, and you're not always going to put fire line around them. It doesn't always work. Yeah. There are times when you're going to need a bulldozer to push earth and put a big line around it. But 9 times out of 10, you're just putting an 18-inch line around a fire.
Smoke jumpers sounds like a freaking awesome name for a job, doesn't it?
Right.
How do you get into that job? How do people get into that? Do they obviously have jumping qualifications or whatever? But
yeah, you've got to. It's just training and applying. Like I know people. I've met quite a few jumpers on my book tour doing this, and they just train and apply and train and apply and train and apply, and eventually, they get hired. And if you want it bad enough, you'll do it.
I've seen it, but it also they're often some of the really nasty stories that actually get trapped because, like you say, they're out in the middle of the nowhere as well. And whilst it's never nice to think about it, they really are the tip of the sword sometimes, and get caught in places where there's no way out. I've read a number of stories where they're trying to outrun stuff up a hill, and it's doesn't end well for everybody, unfortunately.
No, it can be, tragedy fires are never fun. Yeah. So go ahead.
When we talk about that 18-inch and the speed and the jumping and stuff like that, how fast can these things travel when you're marching in and you've got a set grid location where you've got your easterns and northerns or whatever where you're heading to? How do they judge the distance for the travel in and where you're going to start digging these lines? How fast can this stuff really move when it's at its worst? Fast.
For instance, we were doing in 2015. It was, I believe, in August, and we were doing a backburn. So, what a backburn consists of is we're setting the fires. We're actively burning fuel in front, before the head of the fire. So the head of the fire is coming towards you, and then you burn that fuel before it. So that way, when the fire hits what's already burnt, there is no fuel to feed the fire dies. So we're doing this backburn, and we have predicted winds. So we work like hand in hand with designated meteorologists, and they'll do spot weather forecasts and be like, okay, so we're predicting that like in this area, we're going to have a wind shift, and it's going to go north to south at 3 p.m. and it's going to be a 50-mile-an-hour wind shift. That's fast for wind, B, especially for fire. So we're expecting this at 3. So we get out there at 10 a.m. and we have a 4-hour window to do this burn before. Then that gives us an hour leeway, and we're good.
Like you say, if it's only 10 to 20, that's a lot of work to try and get done. Get the cut done, drag it all out, dig it down 18-inch, get the burn done. That's not quick work to be done without some large machinery.
Well, you'd be surprised actually how quick you can put line in. Really? It goes faster than you would think. Because it's not like it's your first time out there. By the time you're fighting fire, you've done some practice line digs, or once you're farther into the season, it just becomes it's just rote training where you know what to do. Everyone knows their job. Everyone knows their position. You get to a fire and you just bust out, and you can you do a quick and dirty briefing, and then you're out there, and it really doesn't take long. You'd be surprised. So we're doing this backburn, and it comes to be noon, and the wind shifts to come at noon instead of 3 p.m. So we're doing this burn, and the winds are pushing the direction we want to go. Conditions are great. Everything's fine. And then the wind shifts back on us. and that starts blowing all the smoke and all the fire back towards us. And it was like that.
Yeah.
It's a very unpredictable thing. We make our best guesses and our best judgment, but there's always just the what if factor, the nature factor that you have no control over.
So I'm guessing the crew leaders are always acting as spotters on that sort of thing. When it does that shift though, how realistic, it's taking you hours and hours to trek into that location. How do they plan that extrication? How do they plan that route out? Is it just down tools and go, or how does it work?
No. So it's you try to be everything we do. We try to train for as much as possible. So we'll be because we stay in a line and we're digging our line, and then the burn's going on, and they'll just shout out RTO, which means reverse tool order. So basically, you just spit on your heels 180 degrees, and everybody just like marches out as fast as possible.
Okay.
And we've been taught that if if you're in a real pinch and fire is really coming down, like ditch everything, ditch your saw, ditch your tools, ditch your pack, get the hell out of there as fast as possible.
3 stone worth of gear that you're humping around with as well. It's not easy to run with, I imagine.
Yeah. No. So you want to ditch that as fast as possible. And they do provide us with fire shelters, which are, they are really a last ditch effort. Like you don't really want to use them. It looks like aluminum foil. And you see these videos of these training videos of these guys telling these stories of using them, and you're basically just like a baked potato, and it's a 50-50 chance if you're going to make it out alive.
Everybody's seen what it's like to try and get under a tarp when it's raining or something like that. But to get under something like that in a rush, I remember reading some of the stuff where, like you say, people have been told to reverse tools or down and go, but they were found still clutching hold of their gear, because it's like any operational person, I suppose. It's like the army, they're like, never drop your weapon, never put it down. That is your tool. That is they're conditioned so much to cling onto it that no matter how much people are told just to drop and go, people are still found humping these 5-6 kilo 10-pound worth of gear around, when logic just goes out the window sometimes. I suppose, like you say, that's where the training comes in.
It's a scary situation, but it gets the blood flowing, gets the heart ticking, and you just kind of you just do it. For me, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, it was like emotion shut off, like logic shut off. It's just like your body just is, you're trained to do something, and you're just acting on instinct, and you just go. And, so
I wanted to ask you about how much it affects that sort of hyper awareness. We talk about a lot of people that act in these sort of environments and situations where things can turn quickly, and you need to be so aware of your surroundings. And I remember when I was reading through the book about felling trees, and I've spent a very, 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 very small amount of time doing it, but you have to be super aware of your entire surroundings, because it's not easy to get out the way when these things start coming down, and especially, like I say, with the wind directions and teams operating in and around you, but still at a distance, and not getting too blinkered into what you're doing, and remaining aware of your surroundings, I suppose. Talk to me about when people are doing those cuts, and you said about diseased trees and having that awareness of how things can change so very quickly.
Yeah. So felling operation, any felling operation, whether it's done in wildfire or kind of to gather firewood, is something that needs to be taken seriously. It's not just a silly thing. You go down and cut a tree. It's a very serious operation, and you want to go and you want to find first. You'll find your tree. Either someone's marked it, or you'll come upon it yourself, and you'll see that it's burnt out and leaning a certain way. And you want to start by checking your surrounding area for escape routes. And if you don't have escape routes, you make them. And you're cutting things down. You're getting things out of the way, because you need to be able to run in any direction unhindered, in case something goes sideways.
But when you're doing it all the time, that's got to be such a ball ache. You know what I mean? It's hard to keep that discipline when you're cutting down so much stuff, when you're trying to work through so much stuff. Any that can be anything you're doing it can be like that, though, where you're just like again, and it just you just kind of switch off and kind of go into autopilot, and
But ideally, you're clearing out your escape routes. You're checking your tree, and you're looking like where how's it leaning? What am I dealing with here for branches? Where it's burnt out over here. The wind's coming from this direction. I'm upslope. I've got a crew down there. You want to find out. You want to think about where you're gonna drop it, because you're like, I got people over there. I've got a tree over here that's gonna flip up. That's like the only spot I can go. So you're like, okay, and then you take your chainsaw and you line up your cuts, and then you do your first initial pie cut, and then the whole time you're cutting and you're looking up, you're cutting, looking up, cutting, looking up, because you're watching the top of that tree. Because if it snaps and falls on you, game over.
Yeah,
you're done. So you want to be hyper aware, and so you're watching everything. So you get your pie cut, and then you do your back cut, and again, as soon as you hit that back cut, my head, I don't even look, because you can do it all by feel. You can just like feel when it hits, and then it starts to tip, and you're like, boom, pull your saw out and just you don't even, as soon as I see that it's starting to go the direction I want, I pull my saw and just walk away. Boom. I just power walk out of there. Like, I don't stand and look at it
as well when it hits the bottom. When it sort of recoils and snaps up. That's when you see those horror stories when people get the chainsaw bouncing back and hitting them in the face, because it's that recoil when it hits. Yeah, it can. It's something that needs to be taken seriously. But on that note, it's also super satisfying to cut a tree down. Like, there's something. I think there's something like really primitive about it. Like when we were cavemen, that's what we first started doing. It's like, one is I make fire. Second is I kill animals and cut down trees. It's a real man thing going on.
Exactly. Well, the other one thing that I think is possibly a difference between structure and wildland guys is that every wildland guy I know is just like a secret pyromaniac. Because we're encouraged to burn stuff, and it's like, ooh, really? Yeah, and it's so much fun. It's a lot of work. And
do you have any pushback? I know because you're there to save life and property and all that sort of stuff, but I was really thinking when I was reading through it, with so much I'm going to say fantastic work, conservation work and all that sort of stuff, as part of the descriptive job is to go and cut down woodland. As the industry, as the sector, had any pushback about, or can you conservatively limit how much you do and all this sort of stuff? Because there's someone always trying to spoil the fun.
No, we don't. When forests are burning down, people change their conservation views
Common
very quickly.
sense comes through pretty quick, hopefully.
Yeah, they're like, wait a second, should I save the trees or should I save myself?
Yeah,
I'll go with myself. Why not? But it's unfortunately there's a big misconception about conservation that people. I thought. I guess since I've worked in this industry and I've seen it firsthand, it's nothing new to me. But I'm finding that as I talk to people, that it's something that they're not being educated on. And what I mean by that is, like, logging is actually good. We actually need we need our forests to be managed, and by managed, that means that they need to be maintained. By maintained, that means they need to be logged. Yeah. That doesn't mean they don't need to be clear cut or there's no trees available. But to have a healthy, thriving forest, like, you need much fewer trees, much fewer undergrowth. That is one of the factors of why we're seeing such destructive, such nasty wildfires in the States, because we spend so much money on fighting the fires and not nearly enough money on prevention. I personally believe that if we took the money that we spent on fighting fires and over the course of 10 years went and managed our forests, our wildland fire problem would disappear.
Yeah, because like you say, a really healthy, new, fresh tree is not going to burn anywhere near as well or as quick. It's all the rotten stuff hanging around. I'm hearing you rightly there in the fact that that's where the poor maintenance of the forestry happens. Yeah.
They don't have the resource. They don't allocate the resources. So they'll do what they call prescription burns, and usually the late fall or early spring. where they'll go out and they'll be like, okay, we're going to do a burn here, and it's a prescribed burn, and it's on purpose, and it's controlled, and they'll burn areas of the forest to clear away all the undergrowth, because that's where a lot of your fire happens, is on the ground, and then it'll climb up trees. So if you take away all the fuel that's on the ground, you're less likely to have to have raging fires. That being said, they don't have enough. They only do small acreages at a time, and by the time fire season rolls around, that's just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
You know,
it's got to be quite scary to do it, though. You know, if
do.
I was tasked to go and do a prescription burn somewhere, I'd be very excited, but I'd be pretty nervous as well, because you don't want to be the guy who loses control of it when the bloody weather change. You know, they're easy to start, hard to put out.
True.
So I don't know if maybe that, listening to you, is part of the reluctance behind doing lots of burn. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, they have plenty of resources at hand when it comes to, you know, just in case. I mean, you're not just out there if you're going to do a burn, you're out there with some fire engines, you know, and then if things get really, you know, out of hand, you know, you can always call in a rotor or a fixed wing. Like, you can get water drops. You're not just out there with you and your chainsaw. Like, they have the resources to do it. They just, I don't know why. I don't know why the world
it probably comes down to cost
do.
Again. Like you say, if they're only getting people in for 100 days of the year to do the reactive aspect of it, it would be more effective, but it'd be a colossal cost to actually employ them people and give them a year-round contract and say, look, a third of the year you'll be doing wildland firefighting, and the other 2/3 of the year you've already got the skill sets, you know the area. It would make sense for you to do that conservation work. But it's kind of like not where the noise is, because people don't realize the build up and how much it's a ticking time bomb until it's too late, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, there's, you know, all kinds of factors that come into this, but it's just one of those things, I guess.
How much does technology play a role in it now? We spoke, I think, before we came on about drone technology and stuff like that, and we're seeing this being utilized more and more in different countries. Are you seeing that much at all in the States? Do they have drone teams that work with the wildland firefighters?
No, I personally have not. I have not seen a lot of drone interaction. I did run into a man that was telling me he was trying to pitch someone at the Forest Service his drone technology, and what he was proposing was a drone that was it was attached to some like a cable, and it would go up and then just kind of like scan the fire. But I've never seen anything like that. Do I think that we need it? Yeah, I think that'd be great.
So how do the reports come in? Is it because by the time, you know,
satellite?
That's what I mean. The geography is massive. Yeah,
satellite. Yeah, they'll print out these huge satellite maps of the area, the topographical maps that'll show you where the fire is. You know, where all the aspects of the fire, where the head of the fire is, where the heel is, where the line is.
Just
where
feel
roads
like by the time
are
you can pick it up on a satellite, it must be bloody huge.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes. It just depends. It really depends on where the location of the fire is.
Yeah.
Because if you have, it's possible to have a fire, you know, deep in the wilderness, and it might not even be found out for a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So here's something that I found really interesting was that lightning strikes. So like something like 90% of wildfires in America are started by lightning strikes.
Jesus.
So you can also, it's also, I'm going to just bust the myth. It's extremely difficult to start a wildfire with a cigarette. Like, you can't just like flick a cigarette out the window and
we always have a running joke when we can't find the source of a fire in the UK. We always just write down spark from passing locomotive, because it's never going to happen, but it's down as one of the options, and we're like, yeah, okay, that was the cause.
Why not? Right. But so you'll get these, what they call a lightning bust, where you'll have just like these like dry lightning storms that come through. And I didn't realize this, but I found out that lightning can just kind of stay, once it hits, it can like stay in the ground and skunk around for weeks on end.
Really?
And then yeah. And then like a week or two will go by, and like the sun will hit just right, and like heat that area of the forest up, and then poof, you got a fire. Jeez. And it's like I was on a fire.
Imagine the heat that gets transferred through a lightning strike is significant, especially like you say if it's dry
phenomenal.
Ground already. I can see that.
It blew my mind because I was like, "There's no way," and then I'm like, "Well, I guess there's a way." It's very interesting. But
take me back to when I was reading through it. There's so many different like small stories that's within the book, but I wanted to start with Chester and the stump humper. Firstly, for anybody that's not sure, what the hell is a stump humper? I've got a great image in my mind, but I'm pretty sure it's
all right. Okay, well, imagine your pinky finger.
Yeah.
Imagine the width and length of a man's pinky finger, and then imagine that this is a wasp type bug, a wasp type insect that is this thick and that big around, and it looks like it has about a half-inch stinger coming off the back, but thankfully that stinger is merely just a protrusion of their exoskeleton. So they can't sting.
That sounds like something out of like Jumanji or something. That sounds freaking massive.
They don't look real. They look in when they're swarming you, you wish they weren't real because they don't sting you, but they have little pinchers and they'll just bite the shit out of you. And you're already wearing like full PPE, so you're covered basically from head to toe. But there'll be like a gap between your wrists and your gloves, a gap between your neck. Your face is exposed, and they'll come and they'll bite any exposed flesh, and it hurts. It hurts bad, especially when
they must be really noisy as well. When you hear a swarm of them, when I remember reading it, I thought about like the old swarms of locusts that you used to hear about, and I thought if you had one of them come the size of your finger, that'd be petrifying.
It's not fun. Yeah, it's not fun. I've seen them on a handful of fires. I haven't seen them on every fire I've been on, but probably 5 fires out of the 100+ fires I've been on, I've seen them. And from what I understand, they infest the trees, and that they're part of the problem of the diseased trees that we have here.
Okay. But
they'll infest the trees, and then once a wildfire comes through, it kind of like burns their homes, and so then they're like immediately all active as soon as the fire is out. And you're still out there, dealing with, the remains of this fire. And now you have to deal with all these stump humpers. So my boy Chester, he was on my fire crew for all 3 seasons. I was on the Highlands 20. His first season, he was 19, and he was just one of those guys that wanted to fit in so bad. Everyone was older than him. Everyone could drink because our legal drinking age is 21. And he just wanted people to like him so bad. He wanted to fit in. And I like Chester. I always liked him because I could relate. And I was like, And then, of course, so on the Highlands 20, we have a crew proverb. There are no secrets on the Highlands 20 because you live together, work together, play together, shower together for 3 months straight. And so there just are no secrets. And so it came to be known that Chester was born the same year I lost my virginity. So then he just became my bastard son. That was like the running joke. To this day, he's still my bastard, and we talk a couple times a month. So he's already done like one little challenge where he tried to drink a bottle of hot sauce and failed. And now we're on this lightning strike fire where we're about 2 miles up from our camp. Let's hike up to the top of this mountain. It was a 1/4 acre fire, small little fire. We put it out. And now we have a rotor that's coming in and dropping buckets of water. And they'll drop a bucket of water. We'll mix it in with all the burnt area. And then we've got about a 10-minute turnaround. So then we'll just kind of like hang out and wait. And then, another rotation. So during this wait period, Chester gets the bright idea that he's going to eat a stump humper. And he wants all of us to like pitch in money because it's a challenge, and he's a kid, and whatever. It's just something that'll bring attention. And he's like, "Oh, I'll get everybody to like pitch in like money or beer." He's like, "Oh, I'm going to get everybody to like," because no one wants to pitch in money. So he's like, "Hey, if everybody buys me like a 30 case of beer, then I'll do it." No one really agrees, but he doesn't really
He's not registering. He's got his mind fixed on it.
He doesn't really
it's
register. He's so dead set on this. And then he gets one, and then it's like, the whole crew is like rallying around, and you can tell that he's like kind of trepidatious and like, should I do it? Should I not? He's about to back out. And then I start a countdown starting from 10, because I've been in his shoes before doing dumb shit as a young man. And there's always that moment when you're like, okay, the crowd's kind of gathering, but I'm not fully committed. I could easily back out and save face.
Yeah.
And then someone starts a countdown, and you're like, oh, fuck it. Here we go.
Fucking go time now. Shit just got
Yeah. So, it's just, and so he puts this nasty bug in his mouth finally after this countdown, chomps it down, and it's like squish, splat, juicy squirt, splat. And then, and then he like chugs water real quick and opens his tongue. And
he didn't barf. He didn't throw up with it.
No, he swallowed a hole. Right?
And then everyone just turns around like, okay, no one was really bothered that you were going to do it or not, dude, but well played. Man, that just seems nasty.
Yeah, well.
Now, we've said a lot about the sort of working hours. You said about marching out and the distances that you cover. 40 pounds, 45 pounds is a lot of weight to be carrying, but when you're doing that sort of work, your personal admin and staying on top of it, staying on top of your hydration and everything like that, it takes a lot of self-awareness. And I remember reading through, I think it was July 19th, 2014, you were with the guy, is it Frenchie guy in the team?
Yep.
Yeah, where that self-awareness kind of maybe slipped lower than we expected it to.
Yep. I went down with dehydration. Luckily, it was just a mild case. But it was, we were on the Chewacum Creek complex, and we were tasked with structure protection. So what that means is they'd already had an evacuation in place. So all the residents from these homes have been evacuated. And now we're on a mountain in central Washington, and the fire is backing down the mountain. And we're tasked with protecting these rural homes that are tucked away up on this mountain. And so the fire is backing down. And so what we have to do is we have to go around their property and clear away anything that could have the fire like jump onto their property, basically.
Okay.
And so, so people will have like trees right next to their house. Bad idea. People will have, just flammable things just out in their yard or close to their house that we'd have to pull away and move away. And where me and Frenchie the fire is right on their property, so we're actively on the fire line. And I'm cutting. I'm a sawyer, so I'm cutting away. Frenchie's my swamper. He's pulling when I'm cutting. And I go through about 2 or 3 tanks of fuel, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling, I've been hydrating as I go, but obviously not enough. And I go down on my knees. I fuel up, sharpen my chainsaw real quick, jump back up, start my chainsaw, jump back to my feet. And then I'm just seeing flashes. I'm not seeing fire. I'm not seeing smoke. I'm just seeing flashes of light. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I fall back down to my knees. And then, I raised my crew boss on the radio. Told him what the situation was. Got our EMT. We always have an EMT with us. Got our EMT. Went back to the buggy. Passed my chainsaw off to Frenchie and let him keep going. And then I went to the buggy and sat there with the EMT for the next probably 8 to 10 hours.
Jesus.
And just hydrated. And
do you use like electrolytes and salt tablets and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Because water's not enough, right?
Yeah, we drink a lot of Gatorade. So we're instructed to eat 10,000 calories per day. That's usually what our meals are supposed to consist of, is 10,000 calories per day.
10,000? What does that look like practically to eat 10,000? Because I used to eat about 9,000 when I was trying to put on a lot of weight, but I want to try and carry it.
It would be a full breakfast. Pancakes, sausage, bacon, eggs, oatmeal, yogurt, fruit, and then a full lunch, which would be like 2 sandwiches, an apple, an orange, candy, snacks,
Jesus.
And then a full dinner, which would be like steaks, potatoes, salad,
Did you have to carry it all?
cheesecake. No. So when there's a lot to explain, a lot to unpack here. So we would have like our base camp, which was the Highlands 20 base camp, and that's where we would be based. Okay. And then we get called to a fire. So if it was just a small local fire, we put it out, come back to our base camp. If it's a larger fire, then we would go and we would camp at that fire. And then that fire would they would set up what's called an ICP, which is an incident command post, and where you're going to have places where you can tent up. You're going to have like a kitchen or a galley, that is preparing meals. You're going to have a station where you can pick up lunches. You're going to have a laundry unit. You're going to have a shower unit. It's just like a mobile city that sets up for every large wildfire. So you're going and you're having breakfast at this big tented area and having a full breakfast. And for the day, then you'll put your lunch in your pack, and then you go out and you'll fight fire for the day, and then you'll come back and you'll have a meal there. Sometimes, and that's the ideal situation. There are times when you don't get that, and you are not trapped, but you are stuck out in the woods for days at a time, and you'll be camping out there and just eating MREs, which are meals ready to eat, and trying to living on those for like 2 weeks is
you just stop
it's not good.
I've been on them for the last week in Kosovo, and I don't think my ass has had much accent, to be fair.
Yeah, I hear you.
That sounds like a pretty good setup, though. No. Did all your food get included?
It is. Yeah. You don't pay for anything. You don't pay for anything.
Wicked. That is an awesome, like staying out on scout camp or something like that, and you're fed and watered every single day. That's a wicked job.
Yeah. It really is. It's a lot of fun. It's like, so when I was with the Highlands 20, I was on the crew for 3 seasons, and they didn't have any women. It was only men.
That sucks.
And it does, but it also doesn't. Like, it was like very liberating to because you don't have to water anything down. Yeah. You don't have to be politically correct. You can, when you're around a bunch of dudes, you just kind of like revert to like sort of like this like inner caveman status where it was, I joke around that it was like a cross between like the Little Rascals and Lord of the Flies minus all the murders. Okay. Like we just like, everyone just like, you're chewing tobacco, you're drinking beer, you're working hard. It's just, you can say whatever you want. There's no political correctness. There's no where we were. Like the Highlands 20, like the Highlands 20 fire camp is like, I cannot stress to you how much in the middle of nowhere it is. Yeah, it is. There is no cell phone service. There is no Wi-Fi. Wow. You are cut off from society. You are 5 miles from the nearest village. You are an hour's drive from the nearest town of any substance. Like you're cut off, and so it's just you. It's got to be
strangely liberating, especially in today's.
It is.
I would really miss that. How do you find sort of a culture like that, and how do you find adapting back? So, like you say, you'd be out there so you do 100 days prescribed. You wouldn't necessarily be out there for 100 days. How many days would you do on and off and that sort of
stuff? So when we're fighting fire, we're going. They've changed it since I worked there, but it was 14 days on, 1 day off.
1 day off.
But if 14 on, 1 day off, and our 14 days consisted of at least 16-hour days each day. So because they have a 2-to-1 work-rest ratio, so if you work 16 hours, you have to have 8 hours off. Yeah. There are times that you're going to pull a 24, a 36-hour shift. That's not uncommon. That can happen, but then you're also going to get that half of that in sleep time afterwards. So
the 1 day off almost feels like a bit pointless because you're not going to have any real recalibration during that period of time. I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, it's you gotta squeeze a lot of life in those 24 hours.
Especially if you've just been on camping for 2 weeks with no women. There's not much
you're
else to be on my mind.
You're trying to pay bills. You're trying to like get out and get laid. You're trying to like do anything you can to like not be around your crew and like not lose your mind. Yeah. And like, then you got to come back, in the 24 hours and you're like, fuck, here we go again. But you just get used to it. Like the body adapts. The body is so adaptable. So when you're out there and you're away from society like this, you grow tighter as a unit. You're working together. You're playing together. You're talking. Like everyone is like an amateur priest / psychoanalyst, and because people are telling you, if you're around people long enough, there's nothing to do except talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And so people will tell you things that you did not want to know, but they'll tell you anyways, just because that's kind of how it is. And
I'd love that.
It gives you such a greater appreciation for life when you're done, when you finish fire season and you get back into society, and it's just like, there's women, there's beer, there's, you can sleep in for as long as you want. You can shower alone, you can eat whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. Just like these little things that like, that we take for granted in everyday life, that like once they're pulled away from you, they just become, everything gets put up on a pedestal where you're like, like 90% of our.
Is there also an aspect of when you're out there doing that, you haven't got to deal with all the BS of life that seems to make itself a priority, or we allow to make itself a priority. Imagine if you go out for 2 weeks, you come back, stuff's changed, but also not a lot's changed. And people, mental health and stuff like that, we can really get ourselves wound up into a little bit of a self-created prison, when really a lot of this stuff is exactly that, is self-created. Does it give you a different lens on how you look at the world when you come back, and now that you've sort of finished doing it? Is there any part of you that really misses it?
Oh yeah. I miss the camaraderie. I mean, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like, being with your bros. And I miss burning. I miss the simplicity of this is your mission. This is what you're going to accomplish for the day. And, just, that's it. There's no distractions. There's no nightly news. There's no bullshit. Like it's just you in the forest, your crew in the forest. And there's something like really beautiful about that. And, it's, like I said, it just gives you a greater appreciation for life.
Military, and you see a lot of it. So a lot of people who come out of the military tend to come into the fire department as well, because they miss that structure. You know what I mean? You kind of get conditioned, you get indoctrinated. You have a structure. You have, like you say, you have a task to achieve, and it gives you a bit of scaffolding, if you will, to get your dopamine fixes, because you've got what you need to do. You've got your fixes. You've got your goals, your tasks that you need to achieve. And in doing so, you get that natural sense of achievement. You have pulled together, you've overcome some adversity, and that's the win. There's something about, I always say to people, like there's freedom in structure, because when we've got too much freedom, we don't really know what to do, and we get a little bit lost in life. Like when you come out and when you're talking to kids and you say, what do you want to do when you grow up, or whatever like that, there's so much you could do, that when there's nothing imposed upon you, then it's hard to get that structure. It's hard to get those wins. How have you created that significance when you came out of it? How have you found purpose and structure, and without having to go into the wilderness for 2 weeks at a time?
Good question.
Or have you? I don't know. Maybe you struggle with it still. I struggle with it. I feel like
no. So I find a lot of firefighters, and it's really easy to do with any kind of occupation, but that kind of becomes their entire persona. Like there is nothing but wildfire, for instance. Like I know some wildland firefighters that they live and breathe wildland firefighting.
Yeah.
And that's all. That's the only thing they have going for them. And I appreciate wildland firefighting, and I love it, and I wish that I could physically go out there and keep doing it, but it was always a means to an end. So I didn't want it to just become my entire personality. So I guess I don't know if I even answered the question properly, but I just always wanted to not limit myself to just one thing and use it as a jumping off point to find out what's next.
Yeah, no, I do hear you. I love that. I've got kids, and one of my youngest child, Lily, she's just left year 5, so year 5 primary school. We have it in the UK, and I look at that, and when I'm talking to teachers and stuff like that, when people struggle to move on with things in their life, it's like you get to 21, 22, you get a career, and some people think that's it, they're going to do that for the rest of their life. And when you do change what you do, I've had several different careers and stuff like that, doesn't mean you hated what you were doing. And I always say, like, Lily's in year 5, she loves it. She loves the teacher, she loves the friends, she loves everything like that. But you know what? At the end of the year, it's over. She's going to move into year 6 because she's growing, because she's changing, because her expectations of herself and her perspective of the world has changed. So she needs to put herself in an environment where she can continue to grow. And I've done this with different businesses that we've had, and some were really successful, but there is an aspect of you, and it's kind of that finite versus the infinite mindset, whether you feel like you've got there and you've arrived and you've become competent. And people do that with roles, like they get in a comfort zone like firefighting or like military, and they make that 90% of who they are. For me, for a period of time, it was strength and stuff like that. I was going to be the biggest, strongest guy in the world, and I took all these drugs and steroids and all that sort of stuff. But I realized it was actually just like a big shield, because I didn't want to expose myself to all the other things. And I feel like I'm hearing that in what you say there. I don't know if I'm reaching here, but like, you could have easily built that up to be who you are. You don't have to challenge yourself academically. You don't have to challenge yourself in other areas of life, because I am the wildland firefighting guy. That is who I am. I'm going to stand behind that shield. And there's nothing wrong with people that do that, but you miss out on all the other. It's a bit like you're reading the same chapter of life again and again and again. You never turn the page.
Yeah, it's kind of like the guy that was like, just keeps reliving the glory days. Like, that high school football game was just the greatest. I was the best quarterback ever that night. They just relive that forever. And then they don't ever try to do anything else. You look at the
date on the picture, and you're like, dude, that was 25 years ago. What have you been doing? Exactly. You're not dead. Exactly. You know what I mean? Keep going, keep growing, keep pushing yourself. So what excites you now? What does personal development look like for you now? What are you, and this could be absolutely anything. We don't know each other personally, but I'm interested. Yeah. How do you, because you seem a gregarious, interested guy who, like you said before about traveling before you even went into the wildland firefighting. What does it look like now? Yeah. What tickles your pickle?
Oh, wow. Right now, I'm focused on career change. Is what I'm doing. I'm focused on career change, and then just lining up sort of my next move, because I get really restless and really itchy feet if I'm in one place for too long. And I've been living where I've been living for about 3 years now. And just before the pandemic is when I started living here. And I'm ready to move on. I'm looking at relocating to either probably Denver is where I'm looking towards. Like I'm in a small. Women.
Okay, primitive, but it makes sense.
Yes. Well, I'm in a very primitive mindset right now. I live in a town of about maybe 2,000-3,000 people.
Okay.
And it's a rural town in the middle of nowhere, Washington, and it's just very difficult to be single here. Because the selection of females is very limited. So I am going to a place where that is not a problem.
Love it. So
yeah.
If you were like looking at yourself 40 years from now, and you're looking back, and obviously you've made several changes in your life, what advice would you be giving yourself at this position? If you were looking back 40 years ahead and said, dude, this needs to change, or that needs to change, or this is what you should be focusing on.
That's a tough one, because I don't know what I'll learn in the next 40 years that I'd want to share with you now.
What would you say to yourself when you were 20? When you were coming out of college? If you met that person now, let's flip it on its head.
All right, fair enough. I tell myself, always forward, always. Like, don't get caught up in the past. Don't get caught up in something that obviously wasn't meant to be. Don't beat yourself up. I'd probably tell myself to love myself more, is what I'd say, because that can be a real issue sometimes.
Yeah. No. I feel that. I'm always my own worst critic. I try to hold myself to an unrealistic standard sometimes, and I do feel a little bit for my family as well, because I always think of myself as a little bit like like a 10,000 volt cable, like sparking around on the floor. Do you know what I mean? It's exciting, and you connect with it and you touch it and you go, oh Jesus, that's exciting. But if you had to hold on to it 24 hours a day, it'd probably kill you. And I sometimes feel like that, and that's the addict within me. They always say addicts just cross a dick; they never really get over it.
Sure.
And it's hard as hell. You do you live in that state of self-torture, I suppose. It's a tough one. What advice would you give to somebody going into the profession, or what do you think is a really, in fact, not even better question? What about somebody that's writing a book? Because you've gone through the colossal task of you're a published author.
Oh! What would I say about writing a book? Okay, yeah, I can definitely drop some knowledge on that. I would say you've got to stay focused. You've got to stay goal oriented, and just don't stop. Like if you really, because I've talked to people that are like, oh, I have an idea for a book, or I have this for a book, or I'm writing a book, and I'm like, well, if you want it bad enough, you'll do it. Mm. That's usually what I say. So you've got to want it bad enough. Mm. You've got to say, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I don't give a shit what anyone thinks. I'm doing it. Like that's what I had to do with this book, where it was like, I don't care. This isn't about money. This isn't about fame. This isn't about any of those things. This is just about like getting my work out there, getting my story out there, getting it. I mean, honestly, I really don't care if people buy my book. I just want them to read my book.
Yeah.
I just want people to be like, oh, wow, this is so, which brings me to, I guess, why I even wrote this book in the first place. When I was fighting wildfire, I always joked around with my crew. I was like, hey, I'm going to write a book about us. And they just roll their eyes and go, yeah, right, Vaught. Sure. Okay. You're going to write a book. Okay. Whatever. So that was one of the reasons. Was I like, well, I have to do what I've already said I was going to. Another reason was I've read quite a few wildland firefighting books, and they fall into one of two categories. Either they heroize firefighters to the point they're flawless,
yeah,
or they're written by people that are investigative journalists, and they don't really have that boots on the ground perspective. And a lot of them deal with the actual fire itself. And for me, that was not what was interesting about wildfire. It was the human aspect. I wanted to know like what people were thinking, the effect that it had on them. How did it affect you mentally, emotionally, physically? How did it affect your love life?
Yeah. Like
the human interaction can, in relation to wildfire. And that's where I took my book, because that's what I knew. And you got to write what you know. And I wanted it to be unadulterated, unfiltered. I wanted it to be raw. I didn't want there to be, that's why I self-published as opposed to going to a traditional publishing, was because I didn't want sticky fingers going in there and politically correcting my book. I wanted it to be, this is the true story. This is what really happened. Either you like it or you don't.
You are preaching to the choir, mate. Honestly, I know this is an audio, but for anybody, I'm just nodding my head along as you're saying that, because for me, you're so right, mate. I realized so long ago that I'm more in love with the people than I am with the job. And that's the whole idea of the podcast. You know what I mean? And that's the reason anybody joins most things. I look at a lot of jobs or a lot of things, a lot of professional sectors. The policies are very similar. The people are very, the uniforms are the same, or the pay is very similar. But it's the people that make it. It's the people. They're the reason we start. They're the stories. They are what gets handed down. And that's what really inspires people. And no matter what sector you look across, there's people everywhere. So the jobs might change, but it's the people that make the massive difference. And I totally agree with you, my man. And I love that you say you're not a published you're not a practiced journalist or anything like that. It's the same with the podcast, really. I just fumble my way through so much of this, but I've got that boots on the ground idea of it. You know what I mean? And my sincere hope is I take advice, of course. We're not so obscene that we don't take anything on board that other people say. But having that level of authenticity, my hope, and that's what I read when I read yours, because we get quite a lot of authors and stuff send stuff in, and it's different when they say, I've written a book about this sort of sector. And then I'll go, cool, when did you start doing it? And they're like, oh no, I'm not part of it. I just wrote a book on it. I interviewed loads of people. I'm like, dude, that's not, I'm sure it's really good. But I want to talk to you about it. And if I talk to you about it, you didn't do it. So there's with all the greatest of respect, there's a lesser aspect of authenticity in it, and that's that's why I love what you've put in so much. What's the best way for people to try and reach out to you? What's the best way for people to get a hold of it?
The best way is to go to charlesvaught.com, and that's CHARLES, V as in Victor, AUGHT.com. That's my website. Or you can go to Amazon or Audible. Either way, it's all going to take you to the same place.
Audible was where I went. I'm an audio fiend, so I listened to it. The first 2 times I listened to it in the gym, and then when it came to putting a brief together, I wanted to delve into the physical copy so I could actually make some notes. I love listening to stuff because I kind of like, there were several points, like the story we said about Frenchie, and then the other one that first time you listen to it, you're so busy contemplating on what's just been said, you kind of miss the next bit. And I have that with a lot of audio. So the reason I listened to it twice, I heard a different story the second time, if that makes sense, because you know the bits that are coming, and then you reflect on the bits that you missed the first time around. But no, I'd strongly suggest people go on and check it out, my man. Thank you so much for taking time out of your life to be with us.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, my man. Let me know how the move goes, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you so much.
Cheers, brother. The Firefighters Podcast is a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operators. Through a series of wide-ranging conversations celebrating those within our sector, we seek to encourage and support this incredible group of people. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield, and I speak with individuals from all walks of life who I sincerely believe can add value to or develop those who have chosen this life path. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world, and thank you for listening.